Wake up, everybody. Welcome into Redacted on this Tuesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
We've got a very busy show for you as we cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores. Who was the killer of Charlie Kirk talking to in the days leading up to this shooting? Were there other co-conspirators involved in this? We're going to look at what the FBI maybe bungled, didn't tell us, is now having to walk back in damage control today.
There's new text messages released between he and his supposedly
Furry
lover, roommate. I feel like a 5-year-old wrote them. I can't get on board with this, Clayton. I can't grasp it. It's like my soul cannot understand it. That's how I feel about this, and I'm cranky as shit about it. So that's what you're dealing with. Thank you for joining us. Where the host admits that she's cranky. I'm glad you're here. I'm not mad at you. So join me in feeling indignant. We're also going to talk about the UK protests because Keir Starmer in the UK says these were plastic patriots. They don't know what patriotism is. He's going to tell them. This is Rich. We have the organizer of those protests coming up.
Senator Rand Paul is going to be joining us here in a few minutes as well. Tommy Robinson is going to be joining us from the UK. We've got Colonel Douglas McGregor on the show today to talk about Putin saying that NATO is now at war with Russia. What took him so long? We've been saying that for years, that NATO is at war with Russia, but Russia is now admitting it. So what does that mean for peace talks? All of that and more as Redacted starts right now. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Bearskin, because you see this lovely coat that Clayton is modeling.
This hoodie?
Is, I would call it a zip-up coat.
Okay, or you could call it a hoodie. That's what they call it.
Okay, all right.
But it is like a hoodie because it does have a hoodie.
It's like sweater versus jumper.
Yeah.
Let's not get into it. What it is warm and nice and also adjustable. It has these nice patches that you can switch out. Now, we recently gifted some to my father, and he was so excited about the idea of switching out the patches and being able to have this versatile. It's a great coat. This is especially a good one for fall because it's light and it's layerable. So check out what Bearskin has to offer, because they're running 60% off deals right now, but only if you get them early. Now, you know we're heading into the cold weather, so don't wait to pay those inflated price of coats right as the weather gets cold. Look into them right now. And you're right, they are calling it a hoodie. They say it's built like a tank with micro fleece, 10 pockets, a clean, rugged fit that looks awesome. Plus, it zips right into the heavy storm raincoat jacket, which I think we've told you we wore in a big storm when we were in Scotland over the winter. And it is windproof and waterproof. We didn't feel anything, even though we were in a really heavy storm. Plus, you get free U.S. shipping and it's fast delivery, and you're locked into your winter gear already, and that's a win. So do yourself a favor. Get your discount by texting the word redacted to 36912, and you'll lock in that 60% off. Again, text redacted to 36912. You'll get a link sent straight to your phone so you can check it out later if you're busy. Don't wait until you're freezing to realize that your hoodie sucks. Get the Bearskin right now while it's 60% off. Also, a good idea if you are like me and have already started collecting Christmas gifts. Yes, I'm doing that already. Text redacted to 36912. Clayton, you're not getting that hoodie for Christmas.
No, I already own one.
You already have it.
All right, let's talk about this. The FBI is in full damage control. Kash Patel on Capitol Hill today trying to save face, getting his ass kissed by a number of out-of-touch senators. But we now know that the FBI is digging into a series of social media posts across X and Discord that seem to hint at Charlie Kirk's murder before it happened, that they knew about it before it happened. At least 7 different accounts now under review. Matt Walsh posting this yesterday. Trans activists were posting about the shooting before it happened. This is LGBT terrorism, he says. Don't make it about anything else. The evidence is overwhelming, and there's a lot more to come. Well, it may be bigger than all of that, as we're starting to see. So, Matt, you might want to hang on to your hair on that one. But to be clear, there's no proof yet at all that people behind these posts were directly involved in the assassination. But the timing raises some serious red flags. Did others know what was coming? Were these transgender Discord contributors helping Tyler Robinson? Was he alone? Was he a patsy in all of this? Some of the messages are downright chilling when you read them. Like this one, it'd be funny if someone like Charlie Kirk got shot on September 11th, LMAO. This person wrote this on September 3rd. September 10th will be very interesting day, another person wrote on August 6th, replying to the message with I plead the 5th after the murder happened. So the September 10th will be a very, very interesting day on August 6th. And then after it happened, I plead the 5th. Okay. Charlie Kirk is coming to my college tomorrow, writes another person. I really hope someone evaporates him, literally. That was a day before the shooting. Let's just say something big will happen tomorrow. This guy, 5 days ahead of time, said something big is coming, and then right after the post said, well, that's that, and linked back to his original post. Something big is coming. Another user wrote this, who'd wished death to Charlie Kirk, predicted that something big will happen when he sets foot on campus. And this person identified as non-binary on X. In a video posted on TikTok the night before the shooting, an individual who appears to be transgender wrote that Charles James Kirk does not know what's coming tomorrow. This isn't a threat, it's a promise. Several of the accounts appear to be transgender, and at least one of the trans cultists followed Tyler Robinson's roommate, who's trans and also a furry. Meanwhile, the FBI now says, we've got our man. Forensic evidence found on the towel, they say, matches the DNA of Tyler Robinson. But there's a lot of problems with how the FBI handled this case in the opening days, of course, and in the response following this. That's why you're seeing Kash Patel on Capitol Hill and all over their PR channel, which is Fox News, doing like Fox and Friends shows and others.
And every moment since.
Yeah.
Something else unbelievable is said on TV, and Fox News hosts go, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wow. You're going to give us a little tease about
must
something?
be true.
Don't
Okay.
worry, as they'll tell us, more is coming, they always say.
Right. Oh, there was a note, but that note was destroyed, but you know it existed because you have forensics of a note that existed before you ever saw it. That's so funny. That's so how does that work, Clayton?
I don't know, but I know someone that knows this better than anyone, and that's former FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin, whose podcast, by the way, he has been like the clearest, most sober voice in this entire thing, calling out the BS at the FBI. Really, I mean, there's only like a few people holding these people accountable who know the inside moves on this. And Kyle Seraphin joins us once again here on the show. Kyle and I did a deep dive interview about like, what do we know about this guy the other day, Kyle? And the comments are just like, thank you for like this assessment. Kyle knows his stuff. So welcome back to the show, my friend. Great to see you as always.
Good to see both of you.
All right. So Kash Patel, Capitol Hill today. I mean, maybe you can just walk us through, quickly here, like how has the FBI from the beginning of this really bungled this? And you, I know, have some insider information on how exactly this was bungled, and it's pretty damning.
Yeah, first of all, they should have never been involved. So let's just start with that. It's the classic rule of recuse yourself. You can't be an interested party and then also be an investigator. And if you're an administrator or you're the leader of an investigative organization, you don't get involved in the actual investigation. I think Kash might find himself on a witness stand if they actually decide to mount a serious defense against this. You're going to see him go out there and they're going to ask him about his understanding of forensics and DNA and evidence gathering and tactics and techniques and why he was on the scene. And, they're going to, I don't know what he was thinking doing this, but the basic rule
what
is,
do you mean? Because of his personal friendship with Charlie Kirk?
No, because he was there.
You can't
he went to the scene.
First of all, he showed up and he walked the scene. And so now he's gone out there publicly and stated a bunch of things that he believed that he hasn't, he stated them as fact. And he's also made himself basically, he could be examined for what the things he's saying and whether they're truthful or not, or whether they end up being true and whether they poisoned a jury pool. A lot of this stuff is going to be evaluated. Like I said, if they mount a serious defense against this, you're going to have real problems. You're also going to have problems, I think, bringing this in a federal court now because of the way that he's introduced himself into the case. But he should have never been there, and neither should have Dan Bongino. They could show up in a personal capacity, but there's zero reason why anybody who is vested in the outcome of a case should ever step forward. And unfortunately, he admitted that it was personal for him on Fox and Friends. They asked him the question, and he nodded soberly and said, yeah, this is real personal, and he was my friend, and all this kind of stuff. The number one rule, it's DOJ policy, it's FBI policy, it's broadly speaking law enforcement policy that if you have a vested interest in the outcome of a case, you recuse yourself. I got specialized training on this once a year. If you have a financial stake in a company that you're investigating, or if they're the victim, you've got to recuse yourself. You would just highlight that you have a conflict of interest, and then you step away and somebody else will step in. So what the right answer would have been is for them to say, listen, we're close to this. We're destroyed and devastated by what happened to Charlie Kirk, who was our friend. This is both Dan and Kash could have said the same thing. We're praying for his family, and we have delegated all authority to approve FBI resources to help the local law enforcement to the associate deputy director. The end.
What do you make of this note business that he went on Fox and Friends and said, we had a note, it doesn't exist anymore, it's been destroyed, but we have forensics of it. What the hell? Like
a note written by
note written by the suspect. The alleged.
Yeah, he's opening himself up to all kinds of questions about what that is. If there's going to be some sort of computer trail that's going to say that we have forensics that was able to uncover a deleted file or something like that, fine, they're going to go get that. But I don't know what he was talking about. Neither do you. He said it was that they were able to uncover it because of their aggressive investigative posture. I assume that he means that they are actively going out and interviewing people, which is what the FBI always does. And when they do a broad canvas of a neighborhood or all the people that might be involved or people that are in sort of the Discord channels, then fine. But his commentary on this is so unnecessary when it comes to Fox. Like, he's not adding any value, and all he's doing is detracting from the credibility of it. I also watched him go out there and speak on in this hearing, and he's not using FBI language. And so for people that don't understand what happens, if you go into an organization and you don't speak the language of that organization, they don't listen to you. He's using the word suspect, which is what you hear in local law enforcement. The FBI uses the word subject. Now, that may seem like a small difference, but what you're telling us is that you're not one of us. And so the agent sat there and listened to him on a call, and he's interested in social media posts. There was a big expose that the New York Times did. I've actually spoken to people that were on that phone call. They said he was essentially scream crying at them that he didn't have enough information, and then he's basically worried about keeping his job. So he's hollering about whether or not they had somebody in custody or didn't have somebody in custody, so he can live tweet out the actions of the FBI. None of that is what you do if you're serious about doing an investigation. Like, the PR end of this is so irrelevant when it comes to actually proving guilt or innocence, when you're actually going out trying to gather evidence to put somebody in jail for a long time, or as Donald Trump has asked for, the death penalty. This should be the most serious thing, and they're turning it into a clown show.
You and I were talking offline about Pam Bondi. So this is erupted, which is crazy. But Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, basically calling on legislators to push for legislation around hate speech. We're going to go after you, people that are commenting about politicians and commentators and so forth. And I think rightly so, conservatives, MAGA, whatever you want to say, the response has been brutal. I mean, absolutely brutal. I think most people have said, what are you thinking? I mean, I'm seeing political, people on the right saying, has Pam Bondi lost her mind? What do you make of this from the Attorney General's office going after free speech?
I just saw Sank from the Young Turks say, you've got to give it to the right for holding on to principles. And I actually think it's a really good thing. I think that if your principles are that free speech are important, if you actually believe what the First Amendment says, which it's actually well written out, you don't have to have any sort of caveats. There's no such thing as hate speech when it comes to the way that, by the way, Charlie Kirk agreed with that. You don't have to believe that you can't say things that are mean. In fact, I'm pretty confident that the people who founded this country had just gotten finished saying some pretty inflammatory things and then done some inflammatory actions, and they probably wanted to be protected from their government to be able to say such things. So I always say you have a constitutional right to be an a-hole in this country. It doesn't mean you can go out and throw a punch in somebody's face. It doesn't mean that you can go take action or violence. She's tried to walk it back and say that she was talking about 18 U.S.C. 875, which is generally known as like interstate threats or interstate communications. And that's not what she was talking about. She was saying that you're not allowed to say things that are mean and we don't like. And in an instinct, I had one of my commenters on X say that the political right, which is not much different than the political left when it comes to the institutions and the parties, the partisan sort of nature of it, that they every once in a while in a moment of tragedy will float out something like this to see how much tyranny would be accepted. Now, the crazy thing is they got away with a lot of this after 9/11. And so we are now just in the legacy where we've finally been able to say FISA is really concerning, not to the establishment, but to those of us that care about freedom. The idea that the government would go out and police things like speech and forethought, and they want to do pre-crime. That should be terrifying to most Americans who lived through the Biden administration and saw that censorship was so rampant. And so thankfully, people on the right are actually pushing back against that. I feel good that is the instinct, that the immediate backlash kind of hit these guys. But it's a kind of a scary instinct that we're looking at an attorney general that seems to not really understand what the fundamental oath is about. And I always say this, when you're in the actual executive arm of the government, You're not swearing allegiance to the Article 1 powers of Congress. You're not swearing allegiance to the Article 2 powers of the executive or the judiciary or anything else. You're not swearing allegiance to the bulk of the Constitution in general. What you are saying is that you abide by the leash that the Bill of Rights gives you, and you won't infringe on individual liberty. So if you take that oath seriously, you should be able to spit out what all 10 amendments are and how you are not going to violate them. And it bothers me that she thought it was so flippantly on a couple of podcasts with Stephen Miller's wife. She's out there talking about, we're going to do hate speech and we're going to investigate people that don't print the right flyers. I thought we just did a whole thing in Colorado about a baker that didn't want to do a cake, and they bankrupted those guys. Like, they destroyed them for everything they were worth. That's not what the right should be about.
Clearly. Okay, I want to ask this. Without getting too far into accusations, there are what I consider credible reports that Charlie Kirk was on the outs with Israeli donors. And you can see this in reports on Judge Napolitano's show with Max Blumenthal, jaw-dropping. Candace Owens has explained this in details. And then the Zionist right is saying you can't say that, that's anti-Semitic, to even imply that there was a break with Israel. So I want to ask you this procedurally. Shouldn't an investigator be compiling a list of everyone who had a beef with the murder suspect? Even still, we're not even a week past the political assassination. So shouldn't we be making these lists of who had a beef with Charlie Kirk?
Or the murdered individual. Not the suspect. Yeah.
Of the murder victim.
I think you find yourself in a really strange spot. Like, when it comes to the Israel-Palestine piece, I don't want anything to do with any of them. I don't care about any of them. Like, they're not bacon eaters, so they're not my people. Like, that's just kind of like Kyle Serafin's general rule. I'm kind of an America-only guy. So for all of the people that want to speculate, oh, this is a Zionist thing, or this is some sort of, extraterritorial nation-state actor getting involved, I think the only list that you can make have to have a logical connection to the investigation. So when they talk about doing an investigation with the FBI, what you say is that all logical investigative steps are exhausted. And if that sort of thing manifests as you're reading, you're like, oh, well, there may be an issue about these people who are now connected, and we're going to pull on that thread, perhaps then that is reasonable. But just on the default position that somebody didn't like somebody, so we're going to investigate them, broadly speaking, I don't think that's appropriate. I don't actually think it's a good use of resources. You've got the Discord channel. You've got people that have said out and out that there are some, maybe they had some advanced knowledge. Those are pretty easy to run down and decide whether or not they had sort of the capabilities, the access, or the placement to know about a conspiracy. Beyond that, people's general beef on social media, like if you went after a public figure and tried to find every single person that said something mean or had a financial stake and didn't end up happy, you're going to be running down everybody. And also, that's a truly sort of tyrannical mandate. I think it has to have a very logical and a pretty narrow scope connected to the investigation to run down it. Just saying.
Okay. So that's only done on Matlock then, right?
Well, no, they wouldn't even waste. No, just Matlock. It's only Matlock doing the investigation. So, he doesn't
have time. There's one guy.
Yeah, there's one guy.
They're doing when they're talking about a broad or an aggressive investigative posture, and I think that's what Kash was trying to say. It does actually happen that they will go out and they'll interview anybody, and the FBI can interview anybody. They can knock on anybody's door. We found that out during January 6th. They'll bang on the door and ask questions, and if you choose to answer them, then you can answer the questions. By the way, you don't have to. Let me just give a free piece of advice. If the FBI knocks on your door, I have this like A, B, C, D thing that I always recommend. Always be closing your door. Don't answer the door to the FBI. There's no upside. Like, what are you going to do? If they really want to speak to you, they could reach out. They could leave a card. You can get a lawyer. You can sit down and talk to them with an attorney, or at least you can say, hey, submit your questions in writing. I'd be happy to answer them, or not. You're not compelled to answer any questions of the FBI. But at the end of the day, do they need to go out there and find every single person like that had a Twitter beef with him, anybody that had a financial arrangement? And then, I've seen all the conspiracy stuff that everybody else has. I've seen everybody indicate the absence of that connection, because it's not overt. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it exists. I think a lot of people do not look at the most common straight line thing, which is that Charlie Kirk upset a lot of people because he was a figure who said what he believed. He was passionate, and I think he was correct in most of what he said. And some people are really, really hurt by the truth. And people who are hurt by the truth tend to take actions. We got a lot of crazy people in this country. If you've ever worked what's called complaint duty in any law enforcement agency, if you've ever done it with an FBI, we used to get calls every single day and night of people making wild allegations. You could read my DMs. I'm sure you guys have the same ones. There's a significant amount of mental illness. There are a significant amount of people that think all kinds of things that are not true. And so to run down all of those things, I think it would be prohibitive. And I also think it's fairly tyrannical.
Okay.
Kyle Seraphin, always the voice of reason. Thank you as always, and wish we had more time. We could dive more deeply into all of the testimonies.
I just feel like I have more questions.
Well,
than
I have a lot more questions.
Yeah.
We don't have 5 hours, but I would love to.
Well, I mean, we're going to give up on this never. So you're going to come back.
Exactly.
Sounds good, guys.
No, we're not going to walk away with this. Kyle, great to see you as always. Check out the Kyle Seraphin Show and follow Kyle on X if you want actual truth, real analysis. As always, Kyle, great to see you.
Have a good one, guys.
Thanks, Kyle. All right, coming up here on the show, Tommy Robinson is going to be joining us from the UK because of all of the protests that continue to grow and mount. The people there want their country back. They are sick and tired of their borders being overrun with illegal immigrants, resources being given away to people that don't deserve them, who don't even live there, and who are just coming in to get free services. And the crime.
More than that. But yes, we're going to talk about it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. We're not calling him a horse.
Don't do that.
That's the expression.
All right. So we're going to get there in a second. And also Senator Rand Paul, Colonel Douglas McGregor are going to join us here in a moment. But first, is your money working for you right now? Well, investing in real estate has never been easier. Savings accounts and CDs offer low returns, barely keeping up with inflation. The stock market, volatile, unpredictable. One day you're up, the next day you're down. If you're tired of watching your hard-earned money sit idle or ride the market roller coaster, it's time for a better solution. Now, you can invest in real estate short notes with as little as $500 with annualized returns up to 9%. Yes, you heard me right, up to 9%. Real estate has long been a proven way to build wealth for most people. The barriers, the high costs, complex management, lack of time, all of that make it seem out of reach. That's where Connect Invest changes the game. With as little as $500, you can start earning fixed monthly returns by investing in short notes. With collectively funded commercial and residential real estate projects, again, here's the thing. All you need to do is go to redacted.inc/invest, open up your free account, fund your digital wallet with $500 or more, and guess what? You will get a $50 bonus in your digital wallet just for setting up your account. So go there right now. Check it out. Just go to redacted.inc/invest today to learn more.
Well, over the weekend, hundreds of thousands of people showed up to the Unite the Kingdom rally in London. Now, the media is saying that it was about 110,000. Many say that number was far larger. If you take a look at some of these images, it does look like far more than 110,000. I'm not an expert at crowd estimation, but okay. The rally was organized to oppose immigration, specifically the immigration that puts the onus on UK residents to support, calls for stronger border controls, calls for more policing of crime, and promoting free speech and national unity. Joining us to discuss is the founder of the movement, Tommy Robinson. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, so give us a little synopsis of the motivation for this rally, because what the media says is that it's far right and hate. Keir Starmer said something similar. I'm going to play that for you in a second. But tell us really what the motivation is.
We started this organisation 24 months ago with a vision that if we can change the culture, we can change the politics of the UK. The reason being, as British proud people, we've been made to feel ashamed of who we are. We haven't been able to celebrate our identity. Every other culture is celebrated. Every other identity is celebrated. They've had the entire population living in fear of being branded a racist, an extremist, and Islamophobe, and they literally paralysed this nation. One of the most fiercest nations in the world was paralysed through political correctness. We allowed a generation of our daughters to be raped by invading Islamic gangs. The whole time our government knew, our police forces knew, our political leaders knew. Not only did they know, but there was a conspiracy of silence between all of them to hide this matter from the public. The reason being, if you were allowed to know the truth of what was happening, you would see it's due to government policy failures of mass open border immigration from Islamic nations. There are so many things that have been covered up. The ability to have a discussion over this has been stopped. I've just come out of an 18-month prison sentence for making a factual documentary. I made a film. I spent 18 months in prison. My sentence before that was 13 months for reporting outside a court case on Islamic rape gangs. There is no free speech. There's only one place that has free speech in the world, and it's the United States of America. And there's only three people I can think of currently who are fighting for Europe's free speech. It's J.D. Vance, it's Donald Trump, and it's Elon Musk. Without them, you see these scenes you just saw. 110,000. The media just continue to dig their own grave. They are irrelevant now. We are the media. We don't need them anymore. And we wouldn't even have hope. And hope is courageous. And the British public, hopefully, have inspired the rest of the Western nations, because this is an attack on Christianity. It's an attack on the West. It's an attack on all of our countries. Mass open border immigration is part of a globalist revolution that has already been going on for 20 to 30 years. We are now the counter-revolution. We want things back. We want our identity back. We want our country back. We want Christianity back. We are fed up of the Islam taking over our towns and cities with the full support of our politicians, whilst we, the British public, are made to pay for it. So the mass open border immigration, you know, in the UK, we have 40,000 British Muslims on a terror watch list. 40,000. We've only got 70,000 armed forces. If you go through the figures of what's been currently happening, male Muslims make up 3% of the British population. They're responsible for 90% of the convictions of gangs of men that rape young children. 30% of the men convicted are called Mohammed. You're not even allowed to talk about this. In fact, our Labour government, Keir Starmer, who likes branding everyone as far right, is currently trying to pass an Islamophobia bill that would make it illegal for me to even discuss these topics with you. So we don't have free speech. We understand that. We're in a post-free speech era. And the United States need to understand exactly what you had under Biden for 4 years. We've had it for 30 to 40 years. And they've took our free speech, they've dismantled everything. But what they managed to do was demoralise our entire population. We have installed pride in 24 months. We had a vision. We've been successful. What you witnessed this Saturday was the largest demonstration in Britain's history. There's a turning point, but Britain is awake. That's what at least the world know now. The British population are awake. The silent majority will be silent no longer.
A friend of the show, Graham Lineman, the writer from
The It Crowd. Father Ted.
Father Ted was arrested, I think, last week or so at the airport for a tweet. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's happening in your country. We were just in Glasgow a few weeks ago and talking to some pensioners there that said, yeah, we've had to move out of Edinburgh. We've had to move out of the cities. We've had to move to the country because our government prioritizes immigrants over us. And what we used to have in this country, we don't have anymore. So we've had to move out. We can't stay in these cities anymore. Our country does not look like it did 15 to 20 years ago. When you talk to the police forces there that are there and kind of clashing with protesters, are they on your side? Will they pull you aside, Tommy, and say, look, I got to deal with this crap, but we stand with you. We really believe the message that you're pushing here.
There's been a massive shift, and yes, they do. So although you saw the scenes on Saturday, it would have been difficult for the police when you have millions turn up. Then millions that couldn't fit into the demonstration area, which then resulted in people taking to streets that they weren't supposed to. So they would have had problems that they didn't anticipate, I guess, because of the sheer scale of the numbers. But there's been a total shift in the police's attitude towards us. For example, 48 hours before this event, Westminster Council attempted to revoke our licence to have speakers and sound systems. Even though we'd had it organised for months, we'd jumped through every hoop we had to. They wanted the police to enforce that order, which would have meant the police preventing us from setting up our PA systems. Now, we had a meeting with the police where they were worried, we were worried, because what I said to the police is, what they're trying to do is what they've done for the last decade. They're trying to turn us, the public, against you, the police. They've made you become a laughing stock. For the last 10 years, the Metropolitan Police's reputation is gone. People just look at them like a joke now. And that's because of political policing. And that's what they attempted then. But the police come back to us after having all their meetings and said, we are not going to enforce any order that prevents you setting up your sound systems. There has been a big inner battle going on with the police and the government themselves. But there's also been a mass shift. You have to understand, I started my activism 15 years ago. I started highlighting, talking about issues no one wanted to listen to and no one wanted to accept. Because if they accept the reality that we've got 4 million Muslims in this country, probably 5, maybe more, and the problem of assimilation and integration is not going to work. You've mixed oil and water. And then those vote banks have become so powerful in towns and cities that the Labour Party, we don't matter anymore. And I'll give you an example. My hometown of Luton, so you can understand why this is happening. My hometown of Luton, when I was born in 1982, there was 1 mosque. There's now 45. Now, in 2013, when I was leading a group called the English Defence League, I sat and looked at the government projected growth forecast for the demographics and the communities in Luton. By 2030, which was a 17-year period, the Pakistani and Bangladeshi community was going to increase by 70 to 77%. The black and white community by 1.3 to 1.4%. So my local council know full well that the future for them is the the Bangladeshi and Pakistani community. We're irrelevant now. So as white working class, we're irrelevant in many of the major towns and cities. So think about your swing states. Think about the Islamic bloc becoming so powerful that that's all that matters to win the election. Well, that's how it's grown in many towns and cities across the UK. And that's why they've pandered to them. That's why they literally our governments bend their knees to any ideology that wishes the destruction of what's made Britain a success, whether that be Black Lives Matter, whether that be Marxism. Yeah.
Now, the mayor of London released this statement. We can put it on the screen, but I'm not going to read it. It's pretty lame. It's saying, you're scaring people, basically. Keir Starmer said your form of patriotism is bad behavior. You're scaring people, is what he keeps saying. He's saying this is plastic patriotism, which is not a form of something I'd heard before. It means you just use symbols and, rally cries. I don't know what he thinks patriotism is. I'm going to play his words. It's only about 40 seconds. And then we'll try and figure out what the hell he means. Just listen to this.
For true patriotism, or we have division and decline under reform. And they are a country in which people feel that they're not part of the country that we are, that is divisive. You saw this on Saturday. Look what happened on our streets on Saturday. That wasn't just very bad behaviour in central London, although it was that, assaulting police officers and the like. That's plastic patriotism. It sent a shiver through so many of our communities who now feel more scared than they did before. I understand that. I'm absolutely determined to lead in this fight of our times between renewal, the patriotic cause of the Labour Party, and the division and toxic chaos and decline that would come under reform.
Now, my feed has shown me people of all walks of life and colors who have assimilated into Britain and actually want the same thing that you do because they have become British. What do you think he means by patriotism, and what do you mean by patriotism, and where is the divide?
He has no idea. Every time I see him speak, I just think they keep digging the grave. Like, he's finished. He's finished in this country. He just keeps doing it, and they wonder why we're accelerating and our support base is accelerating. They just need to accept. He says people are scared. Yes, Keir. That's why millions of people are on the streets of our capital city, because they're scared, because their daughters can't walk to school anymore without getting sexually assaulted by migrants that you've put in hotels at the end of their road. Do you know that we've had 25 sexual assaults against minors by migrants just in hotels? 9 British women raped by migrants just in hotels. They're ones that have been convicted. 90% of rape cases don't even get to a conviction. So that's 9. We've had a terrorist attack from a migrant in a hotel. So just out of the migrants in the hotels, just the ones in the hotels, remember, that's a very small percentage that are in the hotels. They're the cases. So yes, the British public are scared, Keir. Women are scared. Our daughters are scared. We're living in fear because you're importing barbarians and sticking them at the end of our road. That's what you're doing. And then anytime we try to get upset about it or warn about it, you're trying to beat us down with the racist stick or the Islamophobe stick or the extremist stick. It doesn't work anymore. It does not work anymore. Those times have gone. We've burst that dam. It's done. Okay, the British public are done worrying about your labels. When we have children that we love, when the rest of the country has now realised what I've been warning for 15 years, this isn't going anywhere pretty. It's not going to get safer. Our country's not got safer. It's getting worse. It's getting more violent. More rapes, more murder. In 2003, we had 8,000 rapes. In 2023, in 20 years, we had 88,000 rapes. Now, are we meant to just wait another 20 years till it's 880,000 rapes? No, we're not. Right. We're not going to do it anymore. And you know, when you go on the Keir Starmer, the Muslim community have been imported into this country for 40 to 50 years. There are some great Muslims, yeah? There's some great Muslims. But in that 40 to 50 years, if we take the time that we were at war in Syria with ISIS, in that 3-year period of ISIS, 4 times as many British Muslims went to join ISIS than have ever joined the British military. So in 3-year period, 4 times more went to join ISIS than have joined the British military in 50 years. There's a massive problem here. But you're not even allowed to address it or talk about it. And they just want us to sit quietly whilst our country continually floods, the demographic changes, we become a minority. He's talking about people we feel like aliens. We feel like a minority. White English, which is what I am, we're a minority in my hometown. We're a minority and there's no special rights for us. There's no protected diversity rights for us when we're the victims. When our daughters are getting raped, the police don't even want to deal with it because they're too scared of the Islamic.
Well, no. In fact, according to the Associated Press, white people have no shared cultural identity. That's why white is not capitalized in Associated Press style. So I'm sorry to tell you, you don't have a culture, according to the media.
Yeah.
Well, we celebrated our culture in a historic fashion on Saturday, and that is just the start. We went from 30,000 on the 1st of June to 100,000 on 27th of July to 200,000 on 26th of October to millions this Saturday. You wait till our next event. Our next event is going to be the biggest. That already was the biggest. We want world leaders at our next event. We want them coming from all over the world. We'd love a Republican representative to come and speak, because everything that's happening in Britain, this cultural revolution, which is exactly what it is, it would not happen without Elon Musk giving us back our freedom of speech. Do you know, even now, I know Dana White's took over at Meta, so he's in charge of Meta. You can't mention my name. I've never been tried or convicted for anything to do with race crimes or hatred. You can't mention my name without you getting banned or then removing your comment. So I'm totally banned from Facebook and from Instagram. For what? Why am I banned? Because I criticise my government, because I expose their failures. Where is the free speech? So, but the problem that our government have is they used to have control of X. They used to have control of all of them. So they could tell people who I was. But since I've been given my platform back, people actually get to listen to what I'm saying rather than what the media say I'm saying. And now the media don't know what to do. They're all scrambling. I know Sky News were putting out their stupid lies on Saturday with 12,000 people watching. We had 2 million people watching live. So they don't matter anymore. They don't realise they're dinosaurs in this fashion. So. Right.
Tommy Robinson, thank you for joining us from the UK. And maybe our show Redacted will be at this next rally. Just let us know, and maybe we can be there and cover it, since we tend to come there on a regular basis. Thank you so much, Tommy. Great to see you. Thank you.
We have a visa to the UK.
Thank you, Tommy. All right. Susan Grove says, Tommy is brave. For the 15 years he has tried to educate the public. Go watch his films. He's a journalist. He's telling the truth, Susan says. A lot of people... Terry Bryan says, Tommy has been a loud voice. And Linda says, what is the Zionist role in immigration? Great question. A lot of great questions there. So
let's put a pin on that.
All right. We've got more news to get to. Colonel Douglas McGregor is going to be joining us because we want to turn our attention to what Vladimir Putin just said overnight, which is that NATO is at war with Russia. And this comes as President Trump is heading off to the EU right now to try to broker some sort of peace agreement if he can. Before he left, he said that Zelensky needs to make a deal. We're going to talk about all of that in a moment. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Balance of Nature, because, someone who gets their Balance of Nature supplements delivered automatically every month to their doorstep, you don't have to remember to reorder. No running out, just shows up every 28 days without you lifting a finger. And that's how you can become part of their preferred customer program, because you can have it delivered right to your door to get all of the essential vitamins and nutrients that you need. Automatic shipments help you stay on track with the way you want to balance your life. Balance of Nature products arrive automatically, and your wallet's going to notice the difference, by the way. And personal health coaches, are trained to stay consistent and help you reach your goals. And the great thing about Balance of Nature, they'll cover the shipping to give you the best experience possible. Take a look at their website and find the right supplements that are right for you. You're gonna get, just go to balanceofnature.com. You'll get 35% off your first order, and you can look through everything that they've got. It's the easiest way to stay consistent by becoming becoming a preferred customer. That means your supplements show up automatically every 28 days. No reordering, no running out, no hassle. You get the lowest price they offer, and it's the smartest way to go. Again, go to balanceofnature.com, sign up as a new preferred customer with the code REDACTED, and you'll get that 35% off and be on your way to better health. So our thanks to balanceofnature.com for supporting our show. All right, let me reset here. Well, earlier this morning, the Russian military slamming targets in Kharkiv, air raid sirens across Kiev. This comes as Russian President Putin has declared that NATO is officially at war with Russia, something we've been saying for years on this show. Not sure exactly why Putin hasn't wanted to admit it until today, but it's been pretty obvious to all of us that have been watching this, that this is a NATO proxy war against Russia. Meanwhile, President Trump flying to the EU, and as he was leaving, he told reporters that Zelensky needs to do a deal with Russia right now. And he said he'll have to sit in between Putin and Zelensky because they hate each other. Watch.
You know, those are two people, Zelensky and Putin, that hate each other. And it looks like I have to sit in the room with them because they can't sit in the room together. There's great hatred there. But no, that meeting accomplished a lot.
And this morning in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel's enemies are America's enemies and that Qatar and China are preparing for an attack on Israel. So I'm sure we need to probably do what Netanyahu tells us to do, like we always do, and go to war with both of them.
Great.
Right now, listen.
And we will have to do several things to break loose from this siege that is organized by a few states. One is China, and the other is Qatar. And they are organizing an attack on Israel legitimacy.
Okay. Colonel Douglas McGregor. Always.
We made some new enemies, Colonel.
Yeah.
Here we
Not
go.
surprising. It's China and Qatar now. We need to take care of them, but we'll get to that in a second. Colonel, great to see you.
Hey, good to see you both.
All right. What do you make of, first, let's talk about Russia here. President Putin saying that NATO is at war with Russia. President Trump flying there now. I don't know if what sort of peace agreement he's hoping to put in place, if anything, at this point, on his trip to the EU. I don't know if Zelensky's going to show up there. They're going to have a meeting. But we were supposed to have peace. We were told within 24 hours of President Trump taking office. This is descending now into the fall, going to get cold, freezing temperatures now on the battlefield. Where do you think things stand now?
Well, I think things are pretty much what they've been for several months now. The war is lost. The Ukrainians have been largely annihilated. The sad part is that President Trump doesn't seem to be aware of that. He continues to repeat these utterly fictitious numbers and assessments that I guess he gets from the intelligence community, which is part of the problem. I don't know, but I mean, the notion that I think he made a comment yesterday, well, 8,000 men died in the last month. And of course, most of them were Russian, but still it's bad. You know, the Russians have been taking losses in single and double digits now for several months. The Ukrainians are losing thousands of people every week. This is just a slaughter. And I don't know why President Trump doesn't recognize that and simply state the facts. The facts are Ukrainians have lost this war. Now, he can continue to rely on General Kellogg for fictional numbers, which is what he appears to be doing. But even worse, he can conclude that Russia is losing, according to General Kellogg, because the Russians haven't marched into Kiev. The Russians haven't crossed the Dnieper River yet. It's a rather bizarre logic. There's never been any understanding in the West of certain things. Number one, President Trump has never recognized Russia's legitimate security interests in eastern Ukraine. He doesn't seem to understand that once we staged the coup in 2014, the war in Ukraine against Russians began almost immediately. And that war continued to rage for years until finally the Russians said enough is enough and intervened in eastern Ukraine. If you can't agree on the truth of what is actually going on and what has happened, how can you reach an agreement? In other words, if you come into this discussion with two separate sets of facts, what are you going to get? And the answer is nowhere. So I don't see President Trump coming out with anything. The other thing is that we're not in a very strong position because, as you pointed out, Clayton and Natalie earlier, we have led this war against Russia. All you have to do is go back to Biden. And now President Trump sounds just like Biden. Biden said in March, we've got to break Russia. It's not enough to harm Russia. We have to break it, destroy its economy. You know, we've got to rubble the ruble, remember? And then ultimately we've got to get rid of Putin. Good Lord. What more do you want? When is Trump going to step forward and say, listen, I disavow all that nonsense. I'm not interested in doing any of that. If he really wants an end to the war, he has to distance himself from all of that nonsense. He hasn't done it. That's a huge problem, Clayton.
Yeah.
And I continue to see what Zelensky does. It reminds me of a formerly popular music artist that just tours county fairs, because all he does is go on his Twitter and say, I met with this world leader. They love us. They support us. I met with this world leader. We exchange pleasantries. They love us. what the hell is he doing? He's not operating in reality. So the Ukrainians not only have no plan on the battlefield, they have no leadership. So anyone who wants to say they support Ukraine should absolutely support an end to this clown regime.
Well, the clown that you're talking about has an estimated $1.1 billion in various bank accounts that he has stolen from all of the aid and assistance that we and our European allies have provided. And I know he's prepared to retire to either his $15 million estate somewhere south of Naples, Florida, or his massive chateau and vineyard in Italy. And he's got a private plane that's fueled and ready to go at moment's notice. I mean, the man is a criminal. That's the only way to look at it. He makes any organized crime boss look like an amateur. And the man continues to run around high on cocaine or whatever else it is that he's using at any given point in time and make outrageous statements. I don't know why President Trump puts up with it. Doesn't make any sense. He ought to just dismiss this man out of hand. And again, one wonders who is in charge. Who is the president of the United States? It's not just look what's happening with regard to our unconditional support for anything that President Netanyahu wants. At the same time, this is the president of the United States. We're the principal player that has been pushing this terribly stupid and counterproductive war in Ukraine, and he can't stop it by simply saying, my friend Zelensky, you're out of a job. We no longer recognize you as legitimate. We're cutting you off. Get out. Why bother turning it and say, well, you got to make a deal? What? The hell with the deal? The deal is you've lost. Get out.
Yeah, no one to fold him, as Kenny Rogers would say. Well, the real president of the United States is once again set to fly to Washington, D.C. on September 29th. We just learned that President Trump has invited the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu for the fourth visit on September 29th to Washington, D.C. Of course, Netanyahu basically runs the United States, as anyone with a brain knows. You saw the soundbite, of course, this morning with Netanyahu talking about his enemies, China, Qatar, are now enemies. And he says, our enemies are, of course, the United States' enemies. So I imagine we're planning an attack, of course, on Iran. We're getting ready for probably another attack on Qatar and now China. What do you make of those statements today from Netanyahu?
Well, first, remember, all small states are permanently in the business of dragging large states into wars on their behalf. In other words, any small state that wants to survive, like Israel, and starts a war that it cannot possibly win without tremendous support from us, has a permanent interest in dragging us in. Now he's trying to tie us to the phony threat of an imminent Chinese invasion of Taiwan, which is not imminent and not likely unless we're stupid enough to put missiles and rockets on Taiwan that can reach the mainland. We've already got batteries of missiles sitting in the northern Philippines that can reach the Chinese mainland. Nobody talks about that. The Chinese are upset about it and don't understand it. But at the same time, they're not willing to invade the Philippines to get rid of it. But the point is that, China's a current boogeyman. So tie your future to the boogeyman and say, now we're all in this together. No, we're not. We're not in anything at all with Israel. Israel is controlling us for one simple reason. He's bought and paid for the United States Congress and the White House. And there's an old saying, there's nothing more reliable than a man you can buy for cold, hard cash. And it looks like that's what he's got. And the audience that he's talking to, as I understand it, consists of large numbers of members of Congress. And I'm sure they've been handed cue cards for the 29th visit so that they all know when to stand up and give a standing ovation. He owns it. Now, how does he own it? Well, we know who the billionaires are in the United States, many of whom have dual citizenship, who have poured hundreds of millions of dollars into President Trump's campaign to get him into the White House and to buy up support for Israel on the Hill. It's worked. They're in control. The question is, how long will the American people put up with this? When do we hit the streets the way people have hit the streets in London? I don't know.
I'm ready.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, this has to break. I mean, among young people, obviously, And I think this is where you were seeing the cracks, certainly with Charlie Kirk, he was hearing overwhelmingly across universities as he would speak to college students, like, why are members of Congress so bought and paid for by a foreign lobby? It doesn't make any sense. So we're starting to see this big fracture.
They also argued they're not foreign, remember? Because they say most of the money comes from within the United States. Well, that may be true. And these people may be dual citizens. That's another problem. Why we have any dual citizens serving in any federal post of any kind is a mystery to me. Why would you want to tolerate someone like that who has dual loyalties? One of the reasons we passed a law in the Constitution that said that you had to be born in the United States was because people were very fearful that someone who was not born in the United States, that was backed by a foreign power, could ultimately get to the White House. They didn't want that to happen. They were very afraid of it in 1787 and 1789. Well, to some extent, I think you can make the argument it's practically happened. Someone in the White House is now so Israel first in his orientation that America is not just last, it's not even up for consideration on most occasions.
Someone in our chat room just said midterm elections are the closest chance we have to diminish Israel's influence on U.S. government.
But how?
Prepare accordingly.
Like, are we going to vote Democrat then? I've been thinking about this acutely because I saw someone say, I'm going to be a single issue voter now is, did you touch that wall? And if you touch that wall, you don't get my vote. Then we're voting Democrat? I can't do that. Then what?
I don't know. There's plenty of people on the right that are fed up with this. So I don't know. You can vote independent. I don't know.
Well, my favorite wall, of course, is the wall around the Alamo in San Antonio. And that's where I would bring everybody on a routine basis and say, this is the altar of our faith as Americans. This is where we won a tremendous victory at great cost to Americans and established the United States so that it runs basically from the Atlantic to the Pacific. One nation with one law and one language, something that practically nobody else has ever had. That's where we ought to be praying, right there at that particular wall. But I don't know that I'm going to be able to recruit very many billionaires to bring all the congressmen there, or to ensure that all of the congressmen, Democrats and Republicans, get their stipend from the Israel lobby on a routine basis if they go and pray at the wall around the Alamo.
Right.
Yeah.
Write a little note. Have Netanyahu have you wear a yarmulke and pay your pilgrimage, costs. I mean, we saw Marco Rubio doing that yesterday. I mean, America's Secretary of State, and now Netanyahu is coming back to the United States for a fourth time. It's just
Qatar is a problem because Qatar has strongly supported the Turks. I mean, if you take Qatar out of the equation, Mr. Erdogan and Turkey and his economy are in a lot of trouble. I think that's one of the reasons that Mr. Netanyahu mentioned Qatar specifically, because in the last few months, it's become increasingly clear to the Turkish people, as well as to Mr. Erdogan at the top, that Israel is a force that they're going to have to fight. And I think that's a nightmare for the Israelis, because the Turks have the military power to truly threaten Israel. And so taking a swipe at Qatar at this point makes a lot of sense from his standpoint if you're trying to bring the United States into the fight. Now, the Trump family, along with some of the people in his White House, his billionaire contemporaries, have a lot of money invested in Qatar. So I don't know that he's cleared that with them yet, because that could cost the president and some of his friends a lot of money. We'll see. The China card, again, it's the phony boogeyman. And I doubt very seriously that members of the Israeli Defense Force are scanning the skies for the arrival of all those airplanes carrying hundreds of thousands of Chinese paratroopers. So, again, all of this is the same philosophy, though. Let's bring in the United States and drag it into the region. It appeals to egos. It appeals to the globalist, military hegemonists, the people that want to rule the world. And of course, you and I know, everybody with any common sense knows, you can't rule the world with military power. It's prohibitively expensive. It can't be done. And we're losing. We're losing in a big way commercially across the world. We're not trading. We're so busy beating people over the head with tariffs. We're poisoning our own interests. India is a great example. India and we have had great relations for many, many years. And they cooperate with us more than any other state militarily, specifically in the Indian Ocean, where effectively they've proved to be a very useful ally in suppressing piracy and illegal drugs and you name it. And they've worked with us against Islamist terrorism, obviously, because it's a permanent threat to them. But we turned around and we want to punish India because it buys oil and gas from Russia. Well, what we don't seem to understand is something that Washington understood only too well. He said, no state in the world can be expected to move beyond the limits of its own interests. India wants to be friends with us, wants to do business with us, but India is not going to turn on Russia, with whom they've had very close relations for the last 80 years, or certainly since they became independent, and suddenly ruin their commercial relationship with Russia. They're not going to turn on them for any reason. And this business with China, the potential for a war with China, as far as India is concerned, has always been there. But the two sides are too rational and too reasonable to go to war. For what? How do they benefit from a war? So the notion of urging them to be hostile to China, hostile to Russia, hostile to Iran, hostile to anybody that we don't like is ridiculous. It's not working. This whole tariff business is an absolute dud. We need to get out of it.
Colonel Douglas Macgregor, always great to see you. He's penned a new piece that I think you all should read if you get a chance to read it, about how the power in the world is moving from west to east. Where can people read your latest post, by the way?
Well, it's on X. So if you look for me on X, you'll find it. It's about 1,000 words. And I think people will find it very useful because the theme is this. Look, we went through 1492 in the West. When we discovered the New World, it was not just a function of Columbus finding his way to the Indies. It was also a tremendous change in trade. Suddenly, tons of gold and spices and other valuable things came pouring into the coffers of Portugal and Spain and eventually to France and Great Britain. It changed the trade relationships. It effectively killed this thing called the Silk Road. And as a result, the whole Islamic world that had grown rich off of this trade for hundreds of years started to decline and eventually plunged into ruin and poverty. Well, what's happening to us right now is something similar. The world is moving away from us. The world is moving to where the manufacturing base is, to where they're getting a positive reception. And of course, supply chains follow habits. They're building habits now of doing business with India, with China, with Japan. And the supply chains need stability and predictability. We're giving them chaos and disorder and war. Those times are at an end. War is something that should be exception, not the rule now. It's the wrong instrument. We need to tend to our own affairs here at home. We used to be on top from the standpoint of manufacturing, innovation, and invention. We can get there again, but not on the path we're on right now.
Well, thank you for that. We really appreciate it. It's always good to see you.
Thank you, Colonel.
Yeah.
All righty. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You
Thank
too.
you, Colonel. Great to see you.
too.
Follow him on X, and you can read that full post. It's a really good read.
I mean, I spoke with him recently at a Ron Paul event, and he was saying, look, this will tank our economy. You have to be ready. We will build something better. There's no other way to see it. I just don't know how you can continue to live in this fantasy land. So, you got to pay attention. You got to be ready. What that means for you and your family, you've got to decide. But I don't think it's hysteria any longer to think this way.
Someone in our chat said, Macgregor is a true patriot.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Word.
Renee Neal says, really redacted? This the angle y'all going with is disappointing, so beneath y'all channel.
What does that mean?
What does that mean, Renee? Can you be more specific? If you're going to criticize us, please, we love to have a dialogue with people, but just be specific. What angle?
Substantive.
Just be substantive and specific with facts, please. Mm-hmm. If you want to just yell out something and then call us names, that's not going to work with us. But just be specific. So what angle?
Because the antithesis of what we just talked about is we love this war. We're going to win every single one.
Right. Yeah. Let's go to war with everyone.
Okay.
So that's the opposite of what you're saying. No, the angle is we are vehemently anti-war on this channel, and a boondoggle going to war against China or Qatar or in Iran is a disaster for the United States of America and is not in our American interests at all. So, by the way, it's not in any of the Western interest, any Western countries' interest either, not just the United States. So, anyway.
Okay. Well, coming up, we're going to talk to Senator Rand Paul, excuse me.
Oh, the Truth Lady says you never challenged the racist Tommy Robinson. Challenge him about what? What?
We asked him what was his intention, and he told us. That was so. Am I supposed to tell someone what their intention is?
So you want us to challenge Tommy that we've been covering the mass migration into that country for years on this show. Like, what's there to challenge? Like, we've been there. We've seen it with our own eyes. Like, have you guys been to the UK? Have you seen it?
So his premise
it's been destroyed.
Was immigrants perpetuate crimes, and those crimes are increasing. So
just like in the United States. I mean, there's what
the data does
racist?
Show that, and that also immigrants and people of color are disproportionately victims of this, and he doesn't want that anymore. So which bit? Again, he's telling us why he's doing this. Other people decide why they show up. That's not really for me to challenge and say, no, you don't feel that way. You feel racist. So I don't tell people how they feel.
The truth
except
lady,
Clayton, I do tell him.
Yeah, the Truth Lady says his lies, challenge his lies. Okay, what specific lie was he telling? What specific lie was he telling about what's been happening to that country for the past 20 years? I mean, ask anyone that lives there or has moved from there. We interviewed people all across Scotland and different areas in the UK who are experiencing this exact same thing. Pensioners who've been forced out of these cities because their cities have been overrun. Mm-hmm. So anyway, just be specific though. Yes, we know his background, but what does that have to do with the price of milk? Like, what is again? Anyway, this protest happened over the past few days. That's what we were interviewing him about, which is the rising up of the people in the UK that have had enough of this. So, again, substantive.
So you can find him an odious character. Totally fine. I still want to know why he organized this rally and what people adhered to. That's valid.
By the way, I've done interviews with people who are against Tommy Robinson, who've challenged him here on the show. We've literally had interviews with people calling him like former IDF or he's bought and paid for by Israel. Great. That's what people say, and people challenge that. And we've had interviews on this show challenging him on that issue. So,
And I would rather hear from the organizer of the event than Keir Starmer's take on it. Wouldn't you? Don't you want to hear why millions of people have decided to show up for this cause? Isn't that interesting?
KSR in our chat says, I'm in the UK and redacted is correct. HZZ says, I'm in England and I know what it's like here. Truth Lady, are you in England? Do you live in England? Truth Lady, I'm just curious.
No, she said she has family here. Don't want to hear that. That's not a data point. That's what you hear from your family. You have to be there and you have to hear from the sources. No, that's not hearing that. Okay, coming up, we're going to talk again to Senator Rand Paul about how he is still pursuing prosecution of Tony Fauci for lying to Congress and lying to the American people about so many things. But before we do that, we want to tell you about our friends at Venice AI because, oh my goodness, did you catch Tucker Carlson's interview with Sam Altman about ChatGPT? Did you know how little morals goes into how little thought? I mean, basically, it was an hour of him admitting we have no morals at ChatGPT. We will eventually collect all the data on you, and we will maybe tell people things that are morally problematic, and we're not really doing that much to think that through. We just think the technology needs to go forward. That in and of itself has prompted me to stop using ChatGPT. Now, if you read the newsletter, you know that I do use it to create images, but I'm not going to anymore. That's why I signed up for the pro version of Venice.ai. Venice.ai lets you use AI without handing over your sensitive information. It uses open source AI models to deliver text, code, and image generation to your web browser. There's no downloads, no installation, but they don't spy on you or censor the AI, and your messages are encrypted. And in fact, in that interview I'm talking about, again, which was jaw-dropping, cannot suggest that enough that you use it. He literally said, there has to be a way for us to prevent governments from getting your chat data, but we don't have that right now, so it is possible. I guess basically his take on that was, I guess we got to think about that. That was his monotone. Yeah, we got to do something about that. So don't wait for them to do the right thing, you will wait forever. Go to an AI program that has already thought this through. Venice Pro has a pro plan that unlocks the full platform and includes features including PDF uploads for summaries or insights, the ability to turn off safe mode or unhindered image generation. You should see some kinds of images we try to create here in Redacted, and ChatGPT says we won't do that. Sorry, because of its clear moral bias. Okay, I'm done just dumping on ChatGPT. You know why you should look for something else. So again, go to Venice.ai. If you use the code redacted, you'll get 20% off a pro plan, or you can go to our link, Venice.ai/redacted, and use the code redacted to get 20% off the pro plan. Try it out for yourself. You will want to upgrade. Of course, I promise you. Venice.ai/redacted. Use the code redacted. One more time, Venice.ai/redacted.
Well, the walls appear to be closing in around Dr. Tony Fauci, finally. Last week, Senator Rand Paul unveiled explosive new evidence indicating that Dr. Fauci directed staff to delete official government records, emails, documents, of course, which are at odds with his previously sworn testimony before Congress. Now, Senator Paul is calling for Fauci to appear before the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee this fall to clarify these significant discrepancies. And beyond the Fauci revelations, Senator Paul also recently made a surprising stand by, well, not surprising to us who follow Senator Paul, but to a lot of other people, stood by with Democratic senators to push for the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Only he and Senator Hawley were the two Republicans to join with Democrats calling for the release of the Epstein files. Like, what in the hell is going on here? And overnight, Attorney General Pam Bondi calling for aggressively prosecuting so-called hate speech, something that Charlie Kirk did not support at all. Senator Paul joins us now to talk about all of that and more. Senator, good to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So do you think the walls are closing in on Dr. Fauci? Can you walk us through exactly what you've uncovered regarding these alleged requests to delete official records?
So during the entire Biden administration, I've sought records of what went on, the decision-making, why did they fund the research in Wuhan, China? Why were they suppressing evidence that the origin of the virus came from a lab accident? And we got nothing. The Biden administration stiff-armed us at every turn. They prevented us from getting virtually any documents. Most of the things we learned during the Biden administration actually came from freedom of information, people outside of government challenging, and the court forcing the Biden administration to reveal things. And then with the new election, though, we got significant promises from Secretary Kennedy and others that they would reveal a lot of these documents. It took about 6 months. There was some resistance, not from Secretary Kennedy, but from minders that were put around him who I think were preventing us from getting the documents. Finally, we've gotten the documents, and we've been looking through them for about a month now. What we've discovered is in the communications between Anthony Fauci and others, including the head of the NIH, Francis Collins, he would say, read this. This is some more crap coming from me, the senator from Kentucky. I want to be done with this. When you're done reading it, delete this material. That's illegal. You're not allowed to delete emails and discussions about government business if you're in the executive branch. So he also has testified that he didn't do that. So it's sort of two crimes. One crime is destroying federal records. The other crime is that he's previously under oath said he wouldn't. Now, there is the big question of the auto pen pardon. And so that will have to be challenged. But I think this is the best case. It's a good case. I think it's very neat and tidy, lied to Congress, and then destroyed records. Now he has the auto pen. Does the auto pen pardon hold? Is it enough? Was President Biden aware of what he was doing? There were thousands of auto pen pardons that were issued. I think there's a very good question whether or not Biden was aware of that. They've interviewed the person who was running the auto pen, and he says he never met the president. So the person doing the auto pen never discussed it directly. He's hearing it from higher ups who were talking to higher ups who allegedly talked to the president. So I think there's a lot to go on here, and this is a good chance for this to get into the courts and for, frankly, the Department of Justice to fight it out. Whether or not they will do that is an open question, but what I can say right now is I have invited Anthony Fauci involuntarily. If that is accepted, we're done, and we will bring him in. If it's not accepted, we will subpoena him.
A couple of things to unpack there. I guess on the auto pen piece of this, how, the dates in these emails and where this, alleged crime might have occurred, does it fall under that umbrella of the auto pen time frame? Because I know in some of these auto pens, it was very specific. I mean, when you looked at Hunter Biden, it was very specific time frames going back to very oddly dated auto pen moments. So would this fall under that umbrella?
My understanding is that the umbrella was a decade. So it was a decade leading up to the end of Biden's term. So it's pretty wide. And that's another question. Can a pardon include forgiveness for crimes that aren't alleged at the time? Can it include crimes that are all-inclusive? I mean, would it include murder? I mean, the thing is how do you have a pardon that doesn't specify the crime you're being pardoned for? It specifies a period of time, but it says, oh, anything you might have done during that period of time. I don't know how that kind of pardon can be upheld. A pardon usually is very specific. Someone's been accused of a crime, they're in jail, and you pardon them for that crime. Or they're getting ready to be tried for a crime, you pardon them for that crime. So I think there's a lot of questions about the validity, if you can have a wide open pardon, and whether that pardon can be done by an auto pen where the president may or may not have been aware of it.
Now, what sort of specific, are we talking about prison time here? Like what type of specific crimes, destroying federal records? What sort of teeth does that have?
Lying to Congress is the biggest one, probably. It can be 5 years in prison, is a felony. Destroying records, I think, adds to that crime and is against the law. So I think lying to Congress will be the most consequential, but it also shows what kind of person we were dealing with here. We were dealing with a person who was saying there's no way it came from the lab and I didn't fund it and we had no idea they were doing dangerous research, but we have contemporaneous emails when he was saying publicly he had no idea and it couldn't have been gain of function. He was saying privately, we're very worried about that lab because we know they do gain of function research there. And the gain of function research was funded by the United States government with the approval of Anthony Fauci. So virtually everything he said during the entire pandemic was untrue about the origins, but also untrue about what to do. Do cloth masks work to prevent the transmission? They don't. And yet he was parading around with a Washington Nationals mask, telling everybody to wear a cloth mask. And that was bad advice. I mean, for someone to say that's going to help you and you take their advice and you get infected, that's bad advice.
You mentioned Secretary Kennedy in all of this. How forthcoming has the Trump administration been to, I mean, it's kind of like looking back at yourself in a lot of ways, right? I mean, Dr. Fauci was standing there alongside President Trump, Operation Warp Speed, the whole thing. So in many ways, this is shining a light on yourself. How forthcoming has the Trump administration, Secretary Kennedy and others been on your pursuits here of Fauci?
Secretary Kennedy, NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya, FDA Director Marty Makary have all been very, very willing to help, very cooperative. And it took a little while to get things going, but I don't think it was their fault. And now we're having complete cooperation and exchange of information. And like I say, it's a lot of information to search through, but our initial investigation has come up with this, I think, very clear-cut evidence that he lied to Congress when he said he did not destroy federal records, when in fact, not only did he destroy records, he was advising other people to do the same as well.
Will he testify? I know you said you've put that request out. Has he any response yet from his side?
We gave him a deadline for the response, which will be either the end of this week or next week. And then at that point, if there has not been a response, at that point, we will issue a subpoena for him.
Before we move on, I want to talk about Epstein. I want to talk about Pam Bondi's comments on free speech and hate speech. But, there's been a number of revelations. Naomi Wolf's new book on the Pfizer papers just dropped. We're going to have her on the show. But also this new revelations about lockdowns and how absolutely destructive it was to young people. I mean, just thinking about my 3 kids during this whole time, it was devastating. It was devastating. Think about the kids who were getting ready to leave to go off to college in those last 2 years. Have you really looked now upon reflection about what these lockdowns have done to our children, and maybe put sort of rails and safeguards in place that we never go through this again? What's your thought on that?
You know, when you look at the results, I think there is clear-cut evidence that our kids were harmed by, being kept out of school and being isolated. But there's no evidence on the other side of the ledger. There's no evidence of scientific benefit. The disease in the end infected everyone. Everybody got it, whether you were vaccinated or not. The vaccine didn't stop transmission. But we also know that healthy children didn't die from this. So unless your child had a particular health problem, they should have been back in school within a month or two. In Europe, they were back in school in June of 2020. I had Fauci before me in May and June of 2020 saying, why aren't they back in school? And him once again going off on some tangent saying, oh, we're worried about this disease and that disease, and we can't guarantee that they'll be safe. We had information coming from China even before the disease got here that it was extraordinarily less virulent, extraordinarily less harmful to children, and that children weren't dying from this. So we knew early on they could have been in school. But once again, it was directed from Anthony Fauci on down, as well as the teachers' unions getting involved, that they can't go to school. But the scientific evidence was never in favor of keeping the schools closed.
Well, I just want to say thank you for your work on this. I mean, it really, our audience greatly appreciates it. And please just don't ever give up on trying to get to the bottom of this. We definitely appreciate it. Another thing that our audience definitely wants answers on is the Epstein files. We're all being sort of told, move on now, move on, don't look here anymore. You and Senator Hawley made headlines siding with Democrats on this to push for the release of the Epstein files. Why did you break with your Republican colleagues? And what in the world is their argument to keep these things hidden?
I think peace and stability in a constitutional republic like ours, it's necessary that people believe that the justice system, everyone's treated the same. We had a period of time in our history where it didn't appear that minorities or black individuals were treated the same as white individuals, and there was evidence of that. Now, the question before the Epstein papers is, are the rich treated the same as regular people? Or are the rich getting special benefits? Are the rich not being prosecuted for something that if a middle-class person did it, they would be prosecuted? Now, I don't know the answer, but I know that the public perceives that rich people got off. I don't know if it's true or not, but I think when there's such a large part of the public that is worried that justice isn't blind, that justice is different depending on your level of income, I think we should reveal all the records. Either that will be borne out or the records will reveal that nobody got a special deal. But, I just think that it'd be better. I think the only way to restore trust in our judicial system is to allow that information to come out.
If these files remain sealed, what do you think the long-term consequences will be for public trust in government institutions? And we're still waiting on JFK files, for crying out loud.
Well, I think secrecy, begets more distrust. Secrecy and misinformation. So the government secrecy and misinformation over vaccines has led to more mistrust of vaccines. I don't blame those of us who have some questions about vaccines. I claim the people who have been lying to us and saying that your baby needs a hepatitis B vaccine when most people with common sense don't believe that's true. And then what it does is it leads to more hesitancy over all of the vaccines. It's the same with lawfare. If you don't think that, everybody's being treated equal, I think your mistrust heightens and you become more suspicious of the entire legal system. And I think that's not good. I think there has to be a certain amount of trust that we have in institutions, but institutions only deserve trust if they actually are trustworthy. And so the government needs to tell the truth. And, all this discussion of misinformation, the greatest exponent of misinformation has been the government. So it's the government who needs to be held to task on this.
I want to talk about hate speech. Attorney General Pam Bondi yesterday set off a firestorm. Just talking to conservative friends, whether they're MAGA or conservative, it doesn't matter. And there seemed to be a common refrain among all of the people I was talking to last night, which is, we are conservative. We do not abide this move. So I'm racking my brain to understand what she has to say here. She said, Hate speech that crosses the line into threats of violence is not protected by the First Amendment. It's a crime. For far too long, we've watched the radical left normalize threats, call for assassinations, cheer on political violence. The era is over. So she says, basically, we're going to go after anyone treated as a felony who goes after public officials, members of Congress, their families, with hate crime legislation. Or I guess they're going to push for this in some way. They're going to really actively go after this and investigate these individuals. The firestorm from the right. I mean, when they say like, hey, everyone on the right's monolithic, that's not true at all. People on the right were furious about this. People sharing Charlie Kirk's comments. He was vehemently against this idea of hate speech. I'm just going to quote Charlie Kirk's comments here just so I get it correct. Let me pull it up here. Charlie Kirk said, hate speech does not exist legally in America. There's ugly speech, there's gross speech, there's evil speech, and all of it's protected by the First Amendment. Keep America free. So what do you have to say to Pam Bondi? What's your response on all of this?
Be thoughtful, think this through before you start enacting legislation. I knew Charlie pretty well, and I knew that to be his opinion. I've also watched what happened in Europe, what's happening and unfolding in Europe, where there are all kinds of hate crimes. If you don't use someone's preferred pronouns in Europe, you can go to jail. And yet the head of the student union at Oxford could mock and disdain Charlie Kirk's assassination and still be head of the student union. I think there's ways to shun people. I think there's ways to get at people who are hateful or who show sort of this utter disdain. So, for example, they arrested a student yesterday at Texas Tech, but they arrested him for hitting somebody with their sign, not for what the sign said, but for hitting somebody with their sign. It's the same way with some of the protests on campus. It isn't necessarily the anti-Semitic language, but if you are, sort of detaining a Jewish student, not letting them proceed, or if you're breaking windows and getting into college buildings, there are ways to punish people who are taking over the campuses for action, not for their speech. Once we start going down the road of speech, there is a great danger to where this ends up. And so, but I think that, there are other ways of policing this and being upset about it. For example, if you're in the military, you have a code of conduct. You have to act in a certain way. You really don't have complete speech. Part of your contract is you can't politic in your uniform. You actually really are somewhat limited in being involved in active campaigns when you're a soldier. You made it as part of your contract. If you work for me in my office, we don't have a written contract, but it's sort of unwritten that if you're trashing me on social media, you're not in the right place and you probably won't remain. So, I mean, there are ways of doing this. In college, you have to be honest. There's an honor code. You can be kicked out for that. But there are, I think, ways of getting at this. There was the woman on the internet recently. They were showing her, she's the wife of a colonel. She's not under a code of conduct, but she had her 2 children, parading them out there, laughing about how funny it would be if Donald Trump dies. I think at the very least, the colonel deserves a talking to, that his code of conduct and the way his wife is acting reflects on him as a soldier. Does that mean he's fired or canceled or that there's hate crimes? No, but there is some recourse. And there's also the idea that we should shun from political society. We should shun from civilized discourse. We should shun people who think it's funny that Charlie Kirk was dead or assassinated. I think we should try to do that. But none of that means we should have speech crimes.
Yeah, and adding more laws and legislation on top of hate crime laws and other things that, we already have protections in place. If you assault someone, you cause battery on another individual, that's a crime. Like, we already have these laws in place. We just need the proper police force. We need the proper jurisdiction in these liberal cities to actually enforce these laws instead of letting these individuals out if they do actually make an arrest on these people. Senator Rand Paul, great to see you today. Thank you so much for your thoughts on all of this. Stay strong. Continue to do what you're doing. Our audience loves you, and I can count on one hand the members of Congress that we support, and you are definitely one of them. So keep doing what you're doing, Senator. Great to see you as always.
Thank you.
Thanks for standing up for liberty, Senator. Thank you. And thanks to all of you. Thanks for all of you for subscribing to this show and having a great dialogue. That's what this country is all about. I was hanging out last night with really interesting Twitter space, and it was a great discussion about this. I mean, it was almost all conservatives having a really just sort of fierce debate about, do we want like more laws in this country that are going to like limit our speech? Like when we have these moments of tragedy, that's what these power hungry people in Washington, D.C. want. They want to take away our liberty. They want to take away our freedom of speech. They want to take away our civil liberties. They want to take away our ability to transact in cash. They don't want you to own anything. They want total control. I mean, as Rahm Emanuel famously said, you know, Obama's little bitch. You know, don't let a good tragedy or crisis go to waste, right? And that's exactly what they're doing. So when Pam Bondi comes out and says, "Yeah, you know, we're gonna pass legislation to go after hate speech," really? No, we don't want that. So I think that's been encouraging to hear people on the right or just conservatives. Like I think both of these parties, these political parties, are corrupt. The uniparties, of course, they're shades of the same flavor of ice cream. So I'm encouraged that we can come together and say, no, we don't want this. We don't want this at all. So I appreciate the senator on that. Hey, Matthew Owen in the chat. Thank you for your comments today. Appreciate it. He had some disagreements with Kyle Serafin's position that we shouldn't, you know, well, I want to clarify, I think what Kyle was saying. I've talked to Kyle offline about this. Like, if there's a smoking gun or there's a piece of evidence that points to, like, Benjamin Netanyahu was the guy on the phone, like, all right, I just ordered the hit. Go after that son of a bitch. I mean, I think Netanyahu is a demon, of course. You guys know that. I think he's evil incarnate. So yeah, if there's a piece of evidence about that, go after him, please. But I think like marshaling the entire U.S. government to look at internet rumors or unsubstantiated things is not the way we want to go, right? I don't think that. I think if there's evidence, go after it. Absolutely. Any little shred of it, you pull that string, go after it. I mean, that's why I'm so furious about what we did on 9/11. The FBI intentionally ignored and hid evidence. So, yeah, I want everything out there. Go ahead, Philip.
Oh, I think he was also referring to just the strength of evidence. Like, just because something is evidence doesn't mean it's strong evidence. And so, you know, if something is just like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have my own reporting, and I haven't shared it here on the show about Charlie Kirk because, it's relevant, but it substantiates some other things that have been said. But in many ways, it's secondhand. It's not first sourcing, so I'm not going to report it. But in that way, I will say. But some of these reports, obviously about Charlie's like transition and criticisms of Israel and all of that, yeah, that's actually true. And also, of course, what happened at this Hamptons event, which Max Blumenthal at the Gray Zone has reported on. Yeah, investigate that. So he was yelled at by one of these wealthy donors. He was yelled at, and then Bill Ackman was also there. And, he's responded to that now. Of course, that allegation from Max Blumenthal and then Candace Owens separately. But, okay, so the FBI should look into that. Was there some sort of contentious event, and were there people that were then threatening him? Did he have, like, text messages where people were, like, threatening his life? Yeah, you pull that thread. You investigate the shit out of that 100%. So, Matthew, I think, like, you and I are in agreement on that, and I think Kyle would be in agreement on that, too. You wouldn't ignore evidence. That's not what he's saying at all. But you can't, I think, just go down every internet rumor, It was weather manipulation that killed Charlie Kirk. It wasn't a bullet. It was, it was a directed energy weapon. Okay. Is there evidence for that? We'll look into it. If there's evidence for it, please. But go ahead, Philip. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. They're obviously going to start with, they may get there. They may get to that. But that's not they have to start with what they know. And then they can work backwards from there. And so I guarantee you they're looking through the shooter's files and everything they can. And if it traces back somewhere, depending on, Kash Patel's involvement in it, it may lead to something, But,
well, and that's the thing I want is like transparency here. And I know I had a good friend that was in Washington, D.C. yesterday at the White House. And he was specifically trying to make sure that they're pushing for a transparent investigation at the FBI, like 100%. And I jokingly said, isn't that their job? Like, You have to like push them on there. Like you'd think so, but of course there's been so many of these phony investigations by the FBI or political hack job investigations like what they did on 9/11 or Epstein and you name it, that we deserve answers. Like we need full transparency in this. His family deserves full transparency in this. The American people demand full transparency in this. An entire generation of young people who looked up to Charlie Kirk demand full transparency in this. So if it's inconvenient, if there's a huge Israel connection, we better damn well learn about it. If there's a huge Qatari connection, we better learn about it. But it is so curious that Netanyahu was like right out there on television, like almost immediately blaming Islamists, wasn't it? Like he had to go right on television and be like, no, Charlie loved me. I loved Charlie. No, he didn't. No, he did not. Anytime Benjamin Netanyahu has to go out on television and tell you how much other people like him, yeah, it's not true. So he's out on television telling everyone that, no, it wasn't us. Of course, we didn't have anything to do with it. We would never assassinate world leaders. We would never attack Americans, USS Liberty. We would never do something like that. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Put listening devices inside the White House. I mean, as Max Blumenthal reported at the Gray Zone, this year, the Secret Service had listening devices planted on their vehicles by Israeli operatives. This year, under the Trump administration. And we know that Trump hates Netanyahu, doesn't like him, and he doesn't trust them at all. We know that that's true. So I just love that Netanyahu just got out on television. He's like, yeah, we're just all heartbroken about it. We invited Charlie to come here, and he's going to be in Israel. He's a lover of Israel. Okay. Yeah, he had been a supporter of Israel. But why don't you tell the truth about how his position had changed quite a bit over the past number of months? Quite a bit. Moving away from Christian nationalism, Christian Zionism, which is, I think, really a stain on Christianity, moving towards Catholicism. I mean, so there's a lot going on there that people need to know about. So 100%, Matthew, I agree with you. We should investigate all of it. All of it. Don't hide anything. Don't hide anything, even if it's inconvenient. But that's the thing. It's like when it points to these other countries, when these foreign actors, then of course it's inconvenient. We can't talk about it. And all of these shills in Congress, and all these people that have, that are controlled and paid for, taking all this money, like they can't talk about it. So then it gets buried, hidden. But I love that Netanyahu came right out on television. He's like, yeah, it was the Islamists that probably, you got to look at those Qataris. It's probably those Muslims. Okay. Yeah. So Netanyahu really wanted to set the stage right away. And then, by the way, I don't know if you saw, they put up like billboards all around Tel Aviv of Charlie Kirk. Like, who's funding that? They built like sandcastles on the beach across Tel Aviv. Like, okay. Who's funding that? Just very curious, isn't it? So, Matthew, all that to say, I agree with you. But also don't want to be ridiculous and chasing down someone's online. It's like, it was Bigfoot, I mean, I've been looking at I've talked to so many ballistics experts on this and individuals, and it's just like every 5 minutes there's like a different opinion of it. It's like, okay, can we look at the forensic evidence? Can we look at the exit wounds? Do we know exactly how this individual was hit? Where was the gun fired from? Who was he talking to online? Who are his connections? Who are his, who are people covering this up? Who knew about it ahead of time? Yes. Why was Israel the first in the Jerusalem Post to publish information about it first? Why was Netanyahu so quick to get on television to talk about Charlie Kirk? Was it important or relevant that he was invited to Israel and sort of pressured to go to Israel in the weeks before he was killed? Maybe. And I hope that they get the answers on this, 100%. So, thank you, Matthew, for your contribution to the show. I appreciate it. Much love to you. Mark Cunningham says, now is the time for truth. Raymond Huffman says, I want the autopsy. Yeah. Dean Hammond says, you are speaking your opinion, not facts. What part? Ajub Janbaz says, very disappointing, Clayton and Natalie. I thought you guys were for peace and humanity. A real shame. We are. We are anti-war. We are anti-open borders and anti-destruction of countries. We are very much in favor of peace. We're also very much in favor of not destroying countries and then leaving to millions of refugees that are forced to flee those borders and pour into other countries. So every time, like in the United States, when we had our borders flooded with people from Nicaragua and Honduras and other places, it's because we go into those countries and destabilize them and bomb the shit out of them. So maybe we should stop doing that. Like in Syria, for instance. Syria, which used to be one of the most prosperous and peaceful countries in the world, I wouldn't say prosperous, but one of the most peaceful countries in the world, we had to go in there and bomb them and destroy their country. So then what happens to all those Syrian refugees? Do they want to live in a bombed out hovel? No. They're going to try to move around and move out and go where they need to go. So they move into the United States of America. They move into parts of Europe. They move into Germany. They move into England. They don't assimilate into the culture, of course. And so then you have all sorts of conflicts. And then guess what? Those governments collapse because now they're supporting millions of refugees that have poured into the country. Just look at Poland. What happened to Poland when all those Ukrainian refugees poured into their country? So yes, very much anti-war and very much pro-humanity. That's why we speak openly about the nonstop genocide that's been happening in Gaza, by the way. Ray Boss says, wasn't the same guy in charge of the Viva False Vegas moved out to Lahaina? You mean the sheriff? Yeah. Yeah, maybe he's the coroner now in Utah. Oh my God, wouldn't that be crazy? He was in Vegas, then he moves to Lahaina. Now he's in, no, he can't be in that section of Utah. I don't know. Will Van Horn says, yeah, the CIA couldn't leave Syria alone. By the way, pay attention to what's about to happen in Serbia. We've been covering that here on the show. The West is actively trying to foment a coup in Serbia, a Maidan-style coup, very similar to what happened, of course, in Ukraine. They're trying to destabilize and destroy that country, so we're trying to get out in front of that. Lucy Marion says, wow, Clayton and Natalie, what's with all the bots today? Do we have a lot of bots in the chat today? Sometimes, like when you talk about Israel, you'll get like auto bots basically that come in. I don't know if it's like, yeah, I don't know if you guys saw the movie Superman, like the Hasbara monkeys that are like, they're all like typing like Lex Luthor's monkeys. So Hasbara is they're very good about that. Like Israel has like incredible PR, like social media bots that go out. Ukraine did too, but Ukraine's were backed by the CIA. So the CIA had a big operation in Ukraine at the beginning of the war. So if you spoke out against the war, you'd be immediately flooded with a whole bunch of like CIA-backed bots. It was pretty interesting. That has now fallen away because that money has dried up. So like those bots have like pretty much just gone. But do we have any? We have a lot of bots today. Philip, David, Grim.
I don't know. I have other things. I don't pay attention to chat during the show.
Svetlana says, I'm a real person. It says, okay, we're lying. What can you, when you say something like, when you just put out an insult, can you just be specific, please? Like if you disagree because you have a different opinion, like, okay, we can have disagreements, but like you're not entitled to your own facts. So if you just say this is incorrect, then please provide us with the facts. Tanai Reyes says, I'm not a bot, but I live in New Zealand and I'm sick of Israel. Bader Monkey Bots, where are you at? RS says, you and Natalie are the best journalists. Thank you so much. Minions. Franz says, I'm not giving you attention. There have been Shannon says, yes, there have been a few bots. I mean, a lot of times the bots, I guess, if you talk to other YouTubers, you'll see the bots because they basically cut and paste or they use like the same phrasing. So like if they'll just like type something like, they'll type something like unsubscribed, you're an anti-Semite or something like that. It's Ford Dejar says, redacted, you're one of the best in the YouTube. Thank you. Greetings from Finland. Bindi Boxer says, Clayton, do not waste your time with trolls. No, I don't. I don't waste my time with trolls. But if you have a legitimate gripe and it's based on facts, I want to hear it. Like, I guess we could all learn from like Charlie Kirk, and have a dialogue, right? If I say something that's factually incorrect and you have a problem with it, then let's have a discussion about the facts. Like what factually is incorrect? And I would want to hear about it. But just because you have an emotional response, I don't really care about that. Gary Dickinson says, Tommy is working for Israel. What is happening? Redacted. Is he working for, have you confirmed that? I mean, I know he posed with an IDF t-shirt during a visit when he was in the Golan Heights years ago. Has he served with the IDF? I mean, he is British, so I don't know. Have you confirmed that? Like he's paid for by Israel? Now, we've had guests. We had one guest on the show who was very outspoken against Tommy Robinson and against when all that violence was happening about a year and a half ago. He was outspoken saying that, Tommy was lying about this, that it wasn't Islamists who attacked these girls, et cetera, that they were British. And so had a back and forth there. We played both sides of that. So we had him on specifically to talk about the flood of immigrants into the country and the UK's response and the protests this weekend. That was the focus of our interview today. Tam McIntosh says, thank you, Redacted, from Edinburgh, Scotland. Great to see you. Redacted is here for, thank you, Apophis says, Redacted is here for the ones who have eyes to see. Svetlana says, apparently I can find anything and you can't. Svetlana, apparently I can find anything and you can't. Okay, just again, if you have a problem, if there's something factually incorrect, please share it with me. I'm asking you, but you just keep saying phrases. What specifically do you have a problem with? Svetlana, you sound like are you Ukrainian? And do you have a problem with something that Colonel McGregor said about Zelensky? You think he's not a criminal? You think he's a great hero? Then please be specific how Zelensky is a great man. And he hasn't robbed billions of dollars of U.S. taxpayer dollars and lined his own pockets and destroyed your country, by the way. So if that's not true, then please explain how that's not true. Boris says Tommy is a hired mouth. So is Tommy a hired mouth of Israel? Do you have proof of that? Maybe he is.
And if he is, though, he's a hired mouth that organized a protest that we covered. And so we covered the organizer of that protest. That's still, it's still relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and there were still hundreds of thousands of Brits that came out and said, enough, we want our country back. So, you might hate Tommy Robinson. That's okay. But what about the hundreds of thousands of people that don't really give a shit about Tommy Robinson? They care about their country. That's the real story. Don't get distracted by Tommy Robinson. 1C34963L, nice screen name, says, hey, Redacted, is it okay to be anti-Hamas and anti-Israel? I mean, that's up to you. I'm not anti-Israel. I have good friends that live in Israel. I cower. I get very upset every time I get messages from them. They've had to hide in their bomb shelter and put their little kids inside of a bomb shelter inside of their house. I have quite a few friends that live in Tel Aviv. I don't want them to be killed. Their government is corrupt. I've had a friend of mine who worked for Netanyahu explained to me how corrupt Netanyahu is. It doesn't work for him anymore. So I know. We've had Israelis, we've had former members of the IDF on this show who've also confirmed that. So again, he is corrupt, and I think that he is demonic. And so I can feel a certain way about Netanyahu all I want. Does that mean I feel that way about the country of Israel? No, that's how I feel about their government. Do I think that there are some sick people running that country? Yeah. I also think there's some really sick people. Again, I can really say that about my own government. There's some really sick people running my government. Do I hate America? No, I love America. But I can be critical of my country. But if you're critical of the Israeli government, then somehow you're an anti-Semite or something. Like, what? Don't give me that shit. Like, stop with that crap, okay? No, I'm criticizing a corrupt political leader who has killed tens of thousands of people and is totally fine lying about how it's going on and what's happening, killing journalists, almost 300 journalists at this point. So yeah, I have a problem with that. Hamas was created by America and Israel and is still funded by Israel and America. It's used to trick and dupe all of us. Yeah, do I like terrorists? No. But guess what? When you radicalize and you arm them, the United States of America armed Hamas. They didn't have any weapons until we gave them weapons. Can't talk about that. Netanyahu openly talks about the creation of Hamas. Watch the videos of him talking about them. Watch Israeli leaders talk about the creation of Hamas as a catalyst for the greater Israel project. I mean, it's a brilliant strategy if you think about it, right? And then there's so many people who are so freaking stupid that they don't understand that they're being used and duped. Why do you think Israel stood down on October 7th? Why do you think they stood down and allowed this attack to happen? Because they knew it was coming, they funded it, they organized it, and then allowed it to happen. As confirmed by the IDF and Israeli soldiers who confirmed it. By the way, it was also confirmed by Egypt and multiple other intelligence sources. So that ship has sailed. We know that. So why wouldn't more Israelis be outraged that their government lied to them, used and allowed hostages to be taken? By the way, allowed those young IDF soldiers who were running those border outposts at the most heavily guarded, watched fence line in the world to be killed? Like, you just allowed these IDF soldiers to be killed as part of your plan, as part of your stand down orders to allow this to happen. So don't give me this like Hamas is a terrorist organization. Yeah, right. Created and funded in your image and used as a catalyst on October 7th for your greater Israel project to basically destroy and wipe out all of Gaza and take it over so you can build beachfront condos and take over all the millions of dollars and trillions of dollars of natural gas that sits off the coastline. We're not stupid. And by the way, you've admitted it now. Like the cat's out of the bag. You're not even hiding it anymore. You've admitted as much. So, okay. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, not to mention that Israel for years basically pressured Qatar to fund Hamas, actually like asking the leaders in Qatar to fund Hamas. And it's interesting they just recently attacked them too.
Right, you funnel money through Qatar. So Israel funneled money through Qatar in order to give and hand to Hamas, and then you go and attack them. It's brilliant. It's just like how we created, Al Qaeda. Will Van Horn says, like Redacted is a hired mouth for their supporters who are interested in hearing more probable facts. Questions must be asked, and sauce is found to back up the questions. Thank you. Svetlana says, you are lying again. All right, Svetlana, please send me a message on Twitter, or, it seems like, okay, so did Israel not stand down on October 7th? That's been confirmed. Like, what am I lying about? Hamas was not funded by the United States and Israel? Really? Then you should tell that to Netanyahu, who is on tape confirming that. But okay. No, please send me a message. Like, we can't have this back and forth here on a little a chat room, but please send me a direct message. I'd love to hear exactly, and just, exactly how I'm wrong about this, but please. Yes, exactly. Tippy Renee Ephraim says, name calling and accusations with no context. Right. this. Please tell us where he's lying. The Hannibal Directive. Right. She probably thinks that the Hannibal Directive is fake too. Sure. No way, says Clayton. Do you have any stories of Charlie Kirk? You know, I didn't know him as well, anywhere nearly as well as like Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson or anything. Like, I've interviewed him a few times. I've had some interactions with him, like at the RNC when I was in Cleveland years ago. He had one of his first appearances on my show, actually, on television back in like 2012. He was on the show that I used to host called Fox and Friends in New York City on Fox News Channel. So one of his first appearances was on my show. I didn't know much about him at the time. He kind of came up in that world of like the, you know, young sort of, you know, right wing, like sort of Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, younger voices. And so I know that he would be on from time to time, but I don't have like a lot of deep stories with him. But it was sad the other day. Like, I wanted to go to his Twitter feed just to get one of his quotes from something. And it's just like sad to see, you know, when you click on the person and it says, you are each following each other, you know, like, and then you realize, well, not able to talk to this person anymore. Like that hit me kind of hard, you know? But I've always thought he was, you know, wickedly intelligent, very smart. Like, I don't mean wicked in a bad way, just very, very, very fast. Knew his Bible better than just about anyone that I knew. I mean, he was very fast on that, and incredibly. I don't know. I always felt him to be like incredibly kind to people, and when you would have a conversation with him, like he'd look you in the eye, and he was genuinely interested. But again, I don't have big stories like Candace or Tucker, for sure. Let's see. Thank you for your $20 super chat, Lucy Marion. Let's see. Here's another super chat. Steve-O Speaks says, do you think Trump is controlled by Israel? He seems more clever than that. Steve-O says, well, I can tell you from sources that are close to Trump that Trump was surprised to learn that people think he's controlled by Israel. That's a fact. Trump was surprised to learn that young people or people think that he's controlled by Israel. And it made him angry. But does that mean he's not controlled by Israel? I don't know. He's taking a lot of money from the Adelsons, et cetera, right? He's inviting Netanyahu to come to the White House for the fourth frickin' time. Which is like, what? Why? Why is this guy continuing to fly to the United States? And every time he's here, like we're doing the bidding of this country. You know, the last time it was right before the attacks on Iran that the United States actively participated in. Like, I don't want my United States actively participating in any Middle East wars. So why are you inviting this guy? So, I don't know. Controlled is a strong word. He seems independent, you know, in a lot of ways. Trump does, and I think he doesn't like to play second fiddle. And if you bruise his ego in any kind of big way, like that he's somehow controlled by Israel, like you're going to see him do different things. I don't know. I mean, again, controlled is a strong statement, and I've just lost my train of thought. But I think he's definitely surrounded by individuals who keep the narrative a certain way. Like he was just asked about Gaza City, you know, and he's like, well, now I'm hearing Hamas is using people as human shields. Okay, like that's the response. Hamas is using people as human shields. Again, this whole phony Hamas story, this organization that we created and funded and is supported by Israel in order to carry out this genocide. And then you can claim that every building is controlled by Hamas. We know exactly where Hamas are and is. We know exactly how their tunnel system operates. We know everything about them. You know why? Because we built them. In the same way, we know everything about Al-Qaeda because we built them. So don't give me that. Don't play dumb. Like, we don't know where they are. They're using people as human shields now and all that. Yeah. Okay. So now we just have to kill. So we just now need to Hannibal directive everything. We just need to kill even civilians. If they're being used as a human shield, so what? I don't know. I'll ask you guys in the chat. Do you think Trump is controlled by Israel? Let me know in the comments. Do you think he's controlled? Lucy says, have we discussed about Charlie's killer being charged? It happened right before our show. Yes, he was charged with murder, and prosecutors will be seeking the death penalty. Barris says he's somehow being blackmailed in a sense. I mean, perhaps if there's like compromat that the Epstein files and there's something related there that they have on Trump in a big way. I do know that according to Max Blumenthal's reporting that Trump is pretty scared of Israel. To learn that his own Secret Service had listening devices and tracking devices planted on them by Israel. This has been confirmed, by the way, that the U.S. Secret Service has confirmed this under President Trump. Like, why? So you invite Benjamin Netanyahu to come to Washington, and Israel then puts tracking devices and listening devices on Secret Service so they can get, people that are nearby President Trump in their vehicles. So when President Trump is like traveling in a Secret Service vehicle, like they can listen in. Okay. I mean, I know the games of spyware between these countries, but like they're supposed to be like Mike Huckabee said today, we have a lot of allies. America has a lot of allies, but Israel is our only true partner. Okay. I don't know, but like, Philip, you're a partner, great partner to the show. Like, do I put like tracking devices and listening devices in your house?
I would say that I would say the more realistic way to say that is I have monitoring devices in your house because that I can connect to the cameras and microphones. But if you shut it off, then no, I do not. So
right,
and I wouldn't consider that a friendly action. I would probably find somewhere else to work.
Exactly.
I'd find other friends.
So I mean, they're our greatest partner. Yeah, and you're spying on us. Oh man, anything else here? That's what allies do, right? Yeah, exactly, Nathan. Partner in crime, trust nobody. I mean, President Trump has said he trusts nobody. Serenity Lakefield says, why is everyone scared of Israel? Have you seen what they do to people? Have you seen what God knows what they plant on people's computers, what they've done to people? Have you seen what they did to U.S. members of our our U.S. Navy, USS Liberty bombing, in order to get us into a war? They actively attacked one of our own ships in order to use it as a false flag, that they colluded with the CIA, and Lyndon Johnson, the president of the United States, signed off on it and allowed it to happen. So why shouldn't they be scared? I mean, just ask George Galloway. He did a whole monologue the other morning about, like, don't tell me that I shouldn't be critical of Israel for the amount of assassinations they've carried out around the world. He's like, and that's just in my lifetime. So don't tell me I shouldn't be scared, or don't tell me I shouldn't be critical. I am Haas says only complete fool ignores Israel's crimes. Matt X says Bibi will prevail. Of course he will, because he always does. And the United States will likely go in and attack Iran, and they'll be, we'll go into Qatar probably. I mean, we'll do whatever they want. We do whatever Bibi wants. That's what we do. Richard Ellis says other people very close have come out and said that he is scared to death of Israel. Yes, Trump is. I mean, he doesn't seem like a guy who's like scared of very much, you know? So Bong James Bond. How come no one has heard about this? You must be a special insider. Oh, you can read Max Blumenthal's reporting on it. It's not insider. And by the way, the reporting, I think it was in the Washington Post about the Secret Service being bugged by Israel. So that's not new news, by the way. All right. I think that's going to do it, guys. Thank you guys for joining us on this Tuesday. Holy smokes, it's only Tuesday. Thank you for all of your feedback. Great to have conversations with you. Matthew, you included. About everything. Svetlana, look forward to your email telling me how I'm wrong. I know you're a big Netanyahu defender, Svetlana. Can you tell me how I'm wrong about Netanyahu? By the way, again, I have firsthand sources who worked for Netanyahu. So have you worked for Netanyahu? Because I did. I had friends who specifically worked for him and told me how corrupt he was. And they gave me specific examples of that corruption. So unless you have better, knowledge of that, I'd love to hear it, that how he's a saint. Please tell me how he's a saint.
The Israeli Supreme Court knew he was corrupt. That's why he suspended them. I mean, that's something that actually happened. There were protests in the street.
That's why tens of thousands of Israelis take to the streets in protest of this guy and his government. So we've interviewed Israelis on the show who fled Israel because they knew it was coming. They didn't want to be around the corruption anymore. Okay. So I guess all those Israelis are brainwashed or just stupid, just dumb. That's how the brainwashing starts. Okay. No, maybe that you guys could elect a government that actually represents your people. That would be an idea. Thank you guys for joining us. I really appreciate it. No, it's like when you know something and someone's telling you don't know it, or like they're telling you the opposite. You're like, I'm sorry, I have firsthand sources of this. People who are close to individuals in the White House who've told me this. So, okay, Svetlana, I'm open to hearing your information here, but just please bring facts. That's all I want. I just want facts. And if you drop some big bombshell facts, I'd love to hear that as well. Don't link me to old New York Times pieces that have now since been debunked, and they've had to walk them back and correct their reporting about October 7th and other things. Anyway, thank you guys for subscribing to the show. We'll be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We've got a big show lined up for you tomorrow as well. So thank you guys for your support. Much love to all of you, and have a great night, everybody.